My favorite SharePoint list is a list that already exists, that I don't need to retype, that I don't need to copy and paste, that I can simply pull in from someplace fabulous like Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to show you how we can take this list of data from Excel and push it into SharePoint. I also could take this list and pull it into SharePoint from SharePoint, but let's see how it looks to push this in from Microsoft Excel. The first trick is this information has to be formatted as a table. So if you go look at this, it already is formatted as a table, but if it wasn't, if this was a range of cells, then I would select them all including the headings and choose Format as Table. And we'll choose something just a little bit different. There we go. And we have a drop down on that. That works well. Now what I'd like to do is access my table tools, which happens automatically when I format a range of cells as a table. My choice here, Export Table to SharePoint List. It says, where do you want to publish your list? Well, we need a URL for this, so let's go get it. Here I am in my sites. Let's go home, and I want to put this here. That's actually all the information I need. And remember that I don't need the tail end of this, but I can copy it all from here. Let's go back and paste it in. Now my next choice is to create a read-only connection to the new SharePoint list. If I do that, then what will happen is this workbook will be connected to that SharePoint list. That means if someone edits the list in SharePoint, it will be edited here. And this isn't the kind of list I would do that for. This is basically a lookup list. But it's possible if I wanted to create a list where I had different people filling things in, customer orders, event requests, inventory, that I would want to be able to pull that back to Excel for analysis. And that's exactly what this is for right here. I'm going to leave that checkbox turned off because all I want to do is copy this to SharePoint. I'm going to call this Departments, and this is the official list of department names provided by HR and used in SharePoint apps. If you need more information about this, you can click Help to get more information. I'm going to click Next. Notice it's telling me it can't connect to the server at this time. Your table can't be published. What it actually should tell me is you've got too much junk in your URL. It doesn't need to know anything more than the site name, and this site ends right there. After that, when it's layouts and the version of SharePoint 15 and start.aspx, the page name, we don't need any of that. We simply need everything before the layouts. So let's give that a go now and click Next. It says to publish to a SharePoint list, Excel must force columns to use certain recognized value types. So in Excel, I can simply enter data, and data is either numbers, which could be formatted as dates or decimal. It could be numbers that could stand in for true and false in a Boolean value, 0 and 1. And if it's not numbers, values, then it's text, even if there are numbers in that text, like product numbers and social security numbers. Here I'm being reminded, because I'm sending this data to SharePoint, the SharePoint data types will be used, not Excel data types. And that this is text. If, for example, I imagined that these values were supposed to be values, treated as numbers rather than as text, and the choice I see here is text, notice there's nothing to be able to change this. I would simply want to cancel and format this in an appropriate way. Make sure that all of the values in there were actually numbers and none of them were someone typing NA, for example, or a space, that would convince this wizard that it needed to treat it as text. But these are indeed text values, so I'm now going to click Finish. Super sweet. So don't be fooled that it says Microsoft SharePoint Foundation. SharePoint Foundation doesn't exist in these versions of SharePoint, but it is part of the SharePoint Foundation toolkit that does this type of publishing from Excel to SharePoint. It says the table was successfully published, and I can click here to go see it. Let's go. So here we are. If at this point I want to add that active column to the list, I could right here. Or what I might choose to do if I'm the owner of that list is I could have added those columns while I was in Excel and before I published the list. Because I did not check the checkbox that kept a connection, this is now totally separate from my Excel workbook. If I change values in Excel, it does not change them in SharePoint. If I want to edit this list, I need to do it here. One more thought about this type of interactivity between SharePoint and Excel. Remember that I said we were able to either export a table to SharePoint or I could pull the information into SharePoint from SharePoint using an app. I want to show you where that app is, and you'll find it in the site contents, add an app, and it's on the second page of apps. It's not custom list or custom list in datasheet view. It's actually the import spreadsheet app that you'll find right here with the Excel X on it, meant to be able to import spreadsheets. I tend to take Excel data into SharePoint in exactly the way I just showed you rather than using this app for two reasons. The first is that when I import the spreadsheet, I am not going to be prompted to create a lasting connection in the same way. And I find that a very valuable feature of exporting a table from Excel into SharePoint. The second thing is that the import spreadsheet app has a lot of interactivity. It has lots of moving parts, and it's not unusual for this app to be one of the apps that does not work as well in the earliest releases of any version of SharePoint, 2010, 2013, 2016. And if it doesn't work, it will simply give you an error. And at that point, you'll wait for a patch from Microsoft that will take care of issues between Office and Excel and SharePoint. That's really where some of us are right now as the 2016 version of SharePoint is just coming out. Let me tell you why you might want to use the Import Spreadsheet app. Because the data that you want to bring in from Excel is not formatted as a table, and you can't format it as a table. You need instead to be able to simply select a range of cells. And in that case, this app is your best way to bring an Excel table into SharePoint as a list. Two different methods, push from Excel, pull from SharePoint, both allow you to take a data set from Excel and turn it into a list in SharePoint.